flash and the chain lit up the night sky across the ridgeline. 5, 6, 7, 8. Unstoppable rolling waves of fire engulfing trees, animals, and soldiers. 9, 10, 11, 12. Each arrow fighter that passed overhead roared so loudly that I could feel it deep in my bones. 13, 14, 15, 16. These were closer. Nothing I could do but cling to my rifle and pray that the fire would pass over our foxhole. 17. The last explosion that I could make out from the rest before the ground shuddered and I was tossed into the air and the sound of destruction cut out entirely. I hit the ground and rolled. I could feel the heat from the fire on my exposed skin. I could smell the forest burning around me, but my world was now soundless. Looking around while on my stomach, it seemed like everything was on fire. Trees were wicks of orange, reds, and yellows. Soldiers lay on the ground like tossed refuse, and the carefully dug trenches and foxholes of my emplacement were unrecognizable. Everything was detritus, and in the moment I feared that I may be the unlucky one for being alive to witness the destruction. I pulled myself up to my knees, trying to focus on my immediate surroundings. I felt a pain in my back and legs, and my face throbbed from burns, but I still looked around for my rifle. The people who did this needed to be hit back, if only to prove that we existed and did not go without a fight. Seeing the butt of a rifle sticking up from the charred earth, I crawled over and pulled it out. The metal of the rifle was hot, the body of the firearm dirty, but otherwise it seemed functional. I cleared the rifle and slid back to the ground. After spotting a stump that seemed intact, I crawled over to it and waited. I did not know if anyone would come sweep these lines for survivors, but I planned on making sure I shot the first enemy soldier I spotted. I sat with my back against the stump for hours. I watched as the fires burned through their fuel of wood, fuel, and flesh, and the smoke began to clear. What was left behind was a blackened, charred hellscape, and a gray haze that made it impossible for me to see further than a few dozen meters. I closed my eyes and felt shut off from the world. All I could hear was the throb in my skull and a high-pitched tone. When I opened my eyes again, I was shocked to see soldiers wearing a dark green with yellow and gold accents slowly making their way down what used to be the line of our dug fortifications. I fought my urge to panic, instead trying my best to remain still and to appear to be just one more dead body among the many following the airstrikes. I closed my eyes as much as possible as the soldiers moved closer, then walked by. I was about to lift my rifle and take aim at the nearest soldier when I felt the thud of something heavy through the ground. At first I thought it was a battle mech, and the fear that came with being near such a machine translated into horror as I witnessed the armored battlesuit step around the stump and pass me just a few inches away. The towering metal construct seemed a parody of its imitation of the human form. The armor plating curved in its approximation of musculature, and the jump pack added the prospect of sending this thing soaring through the sky at its intended target. However, the most terrifying thing to me at that moment was the mechanical left hand which gracefully opened and closed as it walked past me. It looked like such a human habitual act that it betrayed what was otherwise a very mechanical-looking entity. I closed my eyes and took a breath before lifting the rifle and aiming it at an exposed joint at the back of the battlesuit's knee. I didn't know for sure that the rifle's round could penetrate it, but this might be my only chance to hit back at the invaders that were conquering my planet and had decimated my comrades. I took aim, released the air from my lungs, and pulled the trigger. The next few seconds were a blur as I scrambled to my feet. The round bounced from the edge of the armor plate and up into the gray plastic behind the elemental's knee. It briefly stuttered in its step and then turned at an inhuman speed. I raised my rifle for a second shot, but was knocked back against the stump with such force that the rifle fell from my grip. I was seeing stars, but knew the machine looming over me would kill me at any moment. I pushed myself off the stump and onto the chest of the monstrosity. It wasn't expecting that, and actually took a step back onto its wounded leg, sending it off balance a little bit more. My pointless act caught the elemental off guard as I reached for the knife from my belt and stabbed it against the faceplate. It did almost nothing, but left a scratch across the tinted red glass. The elemental gripped my leg and pulled me away as if I weighed nothing. It held me upside down as I slashed at it with a knife in the pointless act of aggression. Instead of squeezing and turning my ankle to pulp, the battlesuit shuddered. Then the armor panels of the chest opened along the headpiece, revealing an upper chest and face of the soldier inside. I was so taken aback by the sight of the gigantic human who was piloting the suit that I stopped swinging the knife. For several long seconds, I stared at her face while she stared back at me with a curious look. "You were the first to wound me in this invasion, Freebirth," the woman stated in a tone that could have been mistaken for respect if it wasn't also tinged with contempt. Though I could not hear her words, I yelled out a response. "Put me down so I can kill you," I threatened, though it probably didn't seem very threatening as I dangled upside down from her clawed grip. My attempt led to a first smile I ever saw on a clanner's face. "You know what?" the elemental said. "I believe you are brave enough to try." By this point, soldiers had surrounded us, so when I was dropped onto the charred earth with a thud, I was quickly disarmed and bound with my hands behind my back. Before reclosing her armor, the elemental said to her troops, "This one is bondsman. Send him back with 3 to the forward operations camp." The spoken words were recounted to me much later, after my life changed and I left my home planet to live among the stars. Thanks for listening today. I really appreciate the support. What I'd like to try to do here moving forward with the stories is make sure they're just one-shots. So instead of trying to do lots of a series, I just want to do short little Battletech stories that hopefully can be interesting and fun and you'll enjoy. So let me know what you think about this first story, and we'll get back to work. Now, get out there and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.